John, I think on this podcast we were hoping to make it as national as possible, but this season the Mets and the Yankees have done a good job of being good and being interesting. So David Bednar of the Pirates has to wait for another podcast. The Dodgers are in town as we're doing this. They won the first game of a series against the Mets. It got them to 90 wins. They're on pace for 114. By the way, the Mets are on pace for 102. It isn't like they're having a poor year. Do the Mets belong on the field with
Sure.
the Dodgers?
Yeah, it felt like a big series. I was there. I'm going to be there again tonight. I mean, the Dodgers can do no wrong at this point. 90 wins before you hit September. Incredible. I mean, no matter who they throw on the field, they play well. I mean, we saw Heaney briefly with the Yankees. He was atrocious. He's been pretty good with the Dodgers. Gallo, I mean, I don't have to remind you exactly what he did with the Yankees or didn't do, and he's been really good with the Dodgers. Now talking about how laid back he is, I saw today in the Post. Jake Reed, who the Mets DFA'd, got the save. Boy, he looked excited, so it was a great moment for him. But, I mean, the Dodgers are amazing. They obviously have some superstars. They have great players, but it feels like whoever they put in their uniform is going to play well.
Yeah, and yet because of injury, Buehler in specific, who would start game one of postseason, Tony Gonsolin now, who I think they're suggesting is going to come back before the end of the year, but still he's dealing with injury. That feels like the avenue. The total, their run prevention is great, and yet I'll look at the rotation and specifically the bullpen and feel like if someone is going to beat them in the postseason, that's the avenue. Who gets all the starts, especially if Gonsolin is in there? Look, it's still going to be good. Urias and Kershaw is a good opening 1-2. But then it's like, do you trust Anderson? Do you trust Heaney?
It's been good.
They've been good, but that's the avenue. And then the bullpen, because Greg Kimbrell in the end has not been good. Is he trusted to close games? If not, who? Is that a wide enough berth for the Mets, the Cardinals, the Padres, the Braves, etc., to feel like, hey, we are going to keep the Dodgers at one World Series win since 1988? Or is it so substantial, Dodgers to the next national team?
I keep hearing that opinion that the Mets are the favorite or the Mets are going to win because they have deGrom and Scherzer, and surely that is a big, big edge for them to have arguably the two best pitchers in the sport, and they certainly have a shot, and they have a great closer in Diaz, and we were all disappointed Timmy Trumpet didn't get to play the music last night, and we're hoping for tonight. They obviously have those edges, but it's about the whole team. And I was talking to Andrew Friedman, the Dodgers GM, last night, and he says the fewer off days means it's going to really be about the whole roster. And 1 through 26, they are tough to beat. And I've said this many times on this show, other shows. I do think that starting pitching thing is overrated. I think it's a fallacy. If it was so important, the Braves would have won more than once. And now, really nobody other than Alcantara goes 8 innings, right? So you're going to need some relievers beyond Diaz even. You're going to need a bridge. And Ottavino's been good. I'm still worried about their bullpen a bit. Looking at that full roster, looking at those 90 wins, to me, the Dodgers, despite what everyone's saying about the deGrom-Scherzer combo, I think the Dodgers are the heavy favorite. In my book, anyway.
I think they're a heavy favorite. I understand your point about starting pitching, especially since it isn't like Schilling Johnson where you're going to get 7, 8, 9 innings out of it. It's going to be shorter. But, I think Scherzer, if healthy, will do 7. Sure. And I'm curious where they're going with deGrom. It feels like they're trying to build up so that he gives at least 7 in the postseason. I do think that's the puncher's chance best for the Mets is in a 7-game series, do they get 4 starts out of those two guys, and you take the chance, of other games. Do you find a win or two someplace else? You hope you win as many of those 4 as possible. John, you talked about the whole roster. It's something I've been thinking about a lot. The Dodgers didn't do a heck of a lot at the trade deadline, but right now we're talking about a team on a 114-win pace. The Mets did supplementary stuff, and we talked about this at the time, and the initial read out of it was, this deepened them, Naquin and Vogelbach and Givens. And now when they're on the same field as the Dodgers, I'm wondering, did they do enough?
Well, We had a podcast, I think, early in which I criticized what they did, and then, of course, I had to take it all back. Now I'm going to go back and re-criticize, I think. I mean, I still feel like they needed to get more offense. They needed to get more behind Alonso. He looks frustrated now. Is it because the guys behind him are not the threats that they should be? Vogelbach has done pretty well, obviously, and Naquin has had some moments, but I wanted to see them get at least a Mancini or a Bell, somebody who was the guy who would bat fifth right behind Alonso. I wanted to see that. And obviously, Givens has been up and down since he came here. They did try for Rizal Iglesias. They tried for Robertson, didn't get him. I think they should have been more generous with the prospects. We knew early on that they wanted to hold on to those top 5 prospects, and everybody wanted those top 5 prospects, but they couldn't find that 6th or 7th guy that somebody wanted, I guess. It didn't seem to work out in their favor there. But, they still have an outstanding team. They're still on pace, as you said, for 102 wins. They still have as good a chance as anybody else. And, it is a nice advantage to have deGrom and Scherzer. Now, you're not going to be able to pull deGrom and put him in the bullpen like they did with Johnson or, in 2001. They're not going to be quite as dominant. Scherzer willing to go in the bullpen, willing to do anything. They've got a shot, but as I said, after seeing the Dodgers and at 1, 2, 3 in the order, they're pretty amazing.
Yeah, let's talk about that, the 1, 2, 3 in the order. So I wrote a column last week for our Post Plus site about trying to figure out just who the Mets MVP was this season, because I think you can make a case for 3 guys, and let's get to the Mets in a minute. But to your point, I think as we try to think about who's going to be the National League MVP, I think Goldschmidt is the front runner.
Yeah, he's the leader.
But, as we sit here today, just Baseball Reference WAR, Arenado is actually ahead of Goldschmidt. I mean, it's fractional. It's like 7.1 to 7. But almost, besides Machado, all the other MVP candidates have at least one other teammate. Like it's Riley and Swanson with the Braves. It's Arenado and Goldschmidt. And it's at least 3 on the Mets and the Dodgers. And you wonder how they split votes as people try to come to peace with it. So come to peace with at least the Dodgers. Give me 1, 2, 3 in order of what you think it is.
First, I'll say, I've heard that split votes forever, and at least I don't vote like that. I vote for whoever the top 10 guys are. If it's 2 or 3 Dodgers, I'll vote for the 2 or 3 Dodgers.
But remember, it's pointed, though. Would you do, if you did Goldschmidt 1, if you legitimately thought, Betts, Freeman, and Turner were the next 3 guys, would you do 2, 3, 4, or would you say, that doesn't seem right, I'm going to insert Machado in? Because remember, it's a slotted point system where you get a
I
point.
vote for the top 10 in order.
In order.
And I it doesn't feel like that's ever manifested itself and hurt somebody, the splitting votes. I hear that all the time, but I'd like to see an example of that actually hurting somebody. I mean, I think at this point it's going to be Goldschmidt
Did
1.
It happen in 88?
And Arenado 2.
Where Gibson won, wasn't it McReynolds? And was it McReynolds and Strawberry in 88?
I mean,
Am I right
Gibson
about that?
had the better narrative.
Right.
I was out in L.A. at that time. It felt like he was the MVP just based, at that point we thought more about valuable and winning and all that. So,
but I'm going back to 1988 to do this, so even if it was.
The splitting votes thing, I think it's going to come out Goldschmidt and Machado if it stays the way it is now. But in terms of the Dodgers, I mean, it's a 3-sided coin. I think at this point I'd go with Betts just because he's an incredible right fielder. He's a weapon in right field. I'd like to pick Trey Turner. He's a lovely guy. I interviewed him last night, and Freddie Freeman's done a great job. I think they really appreciate him in L.A. and understand how great he is. I'd go with Betts right now as the MVP of the Dodgers.
I think that's right. The only thing you could knock him on a little, I mean, he's been generally durable, but he's played about 15 fewer games than both Freeman and Turner.
He does a higher WAR, though, I believe.
He does have a higher WAR, and I also think he's just the best player in the National League. Even with Goldschmidt. I think Goldschmidt's the MVP. I always think to myself, if I had to win a game today and I had the first pick in a draft, who would I take? I think I'd take Betts because
he does a lot of things.
He does
I don't know.
every day in some way. Now this is what makes the Dodgers special to me, and I think the Mets and the Yankees should really take a cue from the Dodgers here, which is the Dodgers acquired Freeman, Turner, and Betts. Those are outside guys, as good as their farm system, outside guys. Those are guys who every day in some way help you win a baseball game. They're all outstanding hitters. They could all give you power. They're all excellent base runners, even Friedman, who isn't to the speed of the other guys. We saw it yesterday as he hustled into a double in a key moment in the game. He's a very good base runner, a little quicker than people think, and all excellent defenders. Those guys are just every day in every way, and as the Mets and Yankees at the top of the market get to spend money, I would think of those kind of players doing it, and I think I have your order also. I think it would be Betts, Turner, Freeman, but if you want to flip it upside down, sideways, it's very close. Can we go to the Mets? I think it's three guys with the Mets also, right? It's probably Lindor, Alonso, Diaz, right? Or probably the three.
I've got an answer you won't give for this one, probably.
Yeah, go.
I might be influenced by the trumpet right now.
Right.
I'm excited about it tonight. To me, Diaz, the bridge has been okay. I mean, Ottavino's done well. Having that automatic closer is huge, and that's why they were so depressed with the Brewers when they traded Hader, even though he's been terrible in San Diego. He was incredible in Milwaukee. Diaz, to me, is having one of the best relief seasons I've ever seen. I've seen this. Alonso's doing great. I mean, obviously, and Lindor's been he's lived up to his contract, which shows how good he is, because that's quite a contract. But to me, I'd have to go Diaz on this one. I know no one's going to pick that, but to me, he's the MVP.
Well, I wrote about this last week. I had him second, John. I had Lindor first. I think Diaz, if we're going to take valuable as the key thing. So, one of the cases I made for Diaz over Alonso second when I was doing this kind of fake ballot was I played a little game on Pete's and Diaz's, which is if you replaced either guy with just a good player, which of those teams, Met teams, would have a better record? If you say, for example, had Yandy Diaz and Edwin Diaz, or Pete Alonso and Pete Fairbanks, which of those two teams is better? I think it's the Diaz's, because to your point, first of all, he's been great. He's allowed Buck to kind of mix and match with a really not great group of relievers in front of him, because he knows for sure who's locking down 3 outs at away the opposing team. And we saw this, John, in our town for a long time with Rivera. When you have that guy, you influence the other team, where they say, oh, we're playing an 8-inning game today. When do we use our pinch hitter? Should we save a pinch hitter for Diaz? That guy's not going to get a hit either. We got to use that lefty guy against Ottavino right now in the 6th or 7th inning. And you could just feel the confidence in your team and what it does to the other team strategically and maybe confidence-wise. And yet I go with Lindor because, again, every day in some way, right? Not to the level of Betts or Turner, but just a tremendous defender, great on the bases, has hit for power, has, like Alonso, has played all but one game this year, did play through a fractured top of his finger, which I think helped the collective toughness of the team. I think he's the guy, but I think that the Diaz argument isn't, I think you thought I'd throw it away.
Yeah.
I think it's a legit argument for the team.
He's got to be on ballots. I mean, I want to see him on ballots. Obviously at this point, Goldschmidt and Arenado are 1 and 2. Machado's probably 3. Those Dodgers guys are maybe ahead of him, but I got to see him on ballots. He deserves to be on the ballot. I do take the valuable seriously. I know there are some people who do not. I think this is another example of why you pay for quality, and that's one thing that Steve Cohen, who we're going to have on later today, believes in, is you pay for quality, and that's why he spent $43 million for Max Scherzer. It is odd to me that these starting pitchers who now don't throw 8 or 9 innings, or 9 innings like we did when I was a child at least, and then maybe 8 innings 15, 20 years ago. Now they throw 6 innings. Generally, Scherzer may throw 7, but it's a little odd that they're the ones that are making that much money. But I do think part of it is the scarcity of greatness. There aren't that many pitchers in that category. There's Scherzer, there's deGrom, there's Verlander. Maybe this year there's Alcantara. This year, you can count them on one hand basically, and that's you pay for greatness, and that's why deGrom. What has he thrown? 20 innings so far this year. He's people say he's going to be shooting for $50 million. I don't know if that's true. He doesn't really speak about it publicly, but certainly he talks to Scherzer every day. He knows what Scherzer got, and you can make this case that he's better on the days that he pitches. At least personally, I'd rather have Scherzer because he's available basically all the time. But these starting pitchers, there's greatness. There is an incredible value. Turner's a free agent now. he played it right. He didn't take the $100 million from the Nats. I think the Dodgers briefly talked to him in spring training, and he's in great position. But having as many great players as they have is really, I think, the Dodgers' great advantage. They may not have the MVP, but they've got at least 3 guys who are going to be in the top 10. That's pretty good.
The Mets might also have 3 guys that get into that. I think they won't, because I think Diaz won't be on as many ballots as you and I might think he belongs on. Also, look, I did this. I think you can make an argument down the line for if you're making a top 5. Like I did the next 2 for me, like I did Marte, and Scherzer. But like, if you thought it should be McNeil, if you thought it should be Nimmo in the top 5. By the way, because Scherzer and deGrom were out for such long periods, plus McGill, if you thought Bassett or Walker, just before their durability and really good pitching, or even Carrasco before he got hurt, it's why the Mets are on a 102-win pace. They've had a lot of people play really well for them this year, and I'm sure we'll talk about that and a lot more with our guest, Steve Cohen, coming up next on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. John, our special guest on the show is the owner of the New York Mets, Steve Cohen. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Here in year 2 of your ownership, I'm going to throw out this question to open up. You can't say the fans, because that's the answer all the time. You can't say the fans. You're making a great experience for your fans, both on and off the field. What's the best thing about being the owner of the Mets besides trying to please your fan base?
Well, obviously it's when your team is doing well and we're doing well. I mean, it's a hell of a lot more fun than when you're not. And this year's been going pretty well, so I'm trying to enjoy it.
You're on a 102-win pace right now. That's pretty darn good. But you're playing the Dodgers. They seem to be the standard. Yeah. As you mentioned when you bought the team, that's the one team to emulate if you're going to emulate anyone. How close do you think you are to the Dodgers right now, and what would make this a successful season? Steinbrenner used to say you have to win the World Series. Do you have to win the World Series? I mean, it seems like a success already to me.
Well, listen, I mean, I think we've made a lot of progress. And, obviously, I'd love to win the World Series. That'd be fantastic. Only one team wins the World Series every year. And if I remember correctly, the Dodgers, I think they won 7 or 8 division titles before they actually won a World Series. And so it's hard to win, right? And so the only thing you do is put yourself in position where good things can happen. And hopefully that's the case for us. I like this team. I like what they do. They're tenacious. They never give up, and I think those are pretty good character traits as you get into the playoffs.
Steve, you mentioned the Dodgers. They've won 1 championship since 1988 with everything they've done and all their success. You, at your introductory press conference, mentioned you'd like to win a championship in your first 5 years. Do you think you're on pace to do that, and do you still believe that's going to happen?
Well, I like to set high goals and try to achieve them. No guarantees you're going to get there, right? Like I said, there's only one team can win every year. And but if you don't set high goals, then you have to set high goals to otherwise you're just not going to stretch and try to achieve things that other people may think are difficult or impossible. And I think that's important to do, and that's the type of thing I do in everything I do, whether in baseball or my businesses. And I think that's the right approach.
I'm going to get the Wilpons a little credit here right now. I think one of the things they did well was they built a nice ballpark. They do know real estate, and I give them credit for that. But it seems like the ballpark experience is even better now. Was this a goal of yours? I know my daughter is 16. She's a huge Met fan, and she just loves going to the games. I mean, part of it is the Diaz situation with the trumpet and all that, but it seems like it's a great experience, reminiscent of the Giants. I don't know if you've been to many Giants games, but is this something you've tried to do?
Well, I mean, we're always experimenting. And if you notice, we have DJ night on Friday night, and we're always thinking about new ways to enhance the experience for our fans, and we're always trying new ideas, and I think it's definitely forefront in our minds. It's good feedback. I'm glad your daughter's enjoying it because that's the goal, right? I mean, if we can get the young fans involved, even better.
Steve, you mentioned the experience in New York. You share the city with the Yankees, and you've tried to say this town is big enough for the two of us. But just between me, John, I don't think anyone else is listening. You'd kind of like to kick their butt, right, and own this city, wouldn't you?
Well, if no one's listening, why am I doing that?
Oh, you're not supposed to make a better point than me, Steve, with the answer.
He's a pragmatist.
Well, like I said, these things ebb and flow. Do I want to kick their butt? I don't need to kick their butt. I mean, they're the Yankees, we're the Mets, and we're going to do our thing, and they're going to do their thing, and wherever it falls, and I truly believe this, Joel. I really believe there's room for both of us in this city. It's a big city. And I just don't worry about the Yankees. I don't feel like I'm competing with them. I feel like we're trying to establish our own identity, our own brand. And so I really don't think about them.
Wow, that's a new one. Good for you. You guys made a lot of moves in the winter, and obviously Scherzer, Buck, all the free agents, Marte. Obviously, last night we saw Canna perform some more heroics, and Marte didn't quite do enough to win the game. But looking back on it, do you feel like you did everything you want to do, and anything on your mind about any particular move that you really think made a difference? Because obviously, last year a team had a losing record. This year you're on pace for 102. That's pretty good. I mean, certainly Buck, Scherzer, and several others.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you can put it down on paper, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And this year, it all came together really nicely. And don't forget, we also got really great contributions from the players that were on our team last year, right? I mean, Lindor's had a great year, and Alonso's having a great year, and McNeil and Diaz, and now I can go on. And so it's really been a team effort, and Nimmo's had a great year. And it's really been a combination of new players and players that have already been on the team, and it's all come together beautifully.
One of the people you added in the offseason, Steve, and one of the architects of all the stuff that's going on this year, the 102-win pace, is Billy Eppler. Let's deal with a story that just won't die a little bit, and that's that you're just biding time until you could get your hands on David Stearns to run your team someday. Do you still is there validity to that, and do you want David Stearns to run your baseball operations one day?
Yeah, I'm really not thinking about that right now. I'm trying to get through the season, and I think Billy's done a great job, and Billy's a real detail person, and I really appreciate the effort that he's put in coming into a new organization, trying to figure out what's going on, and learning the personnel. He's done a great job, and I'm really pleased.
What about Buck? It felt like you. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. It felt like you were the kind of driving force behind that decision. Has he surprised you in any way? Is there anything different that you weren't expecting from Buck this year?
Well, I don't know if I was a driving force. I think it was a management effort, and we did the interviews, and it was clear Buck was our guy. We have a veteran team, and Buck is just a perfect manager for a veteran team. I mean, he's got the respect of our players, and Buck is Buck. Buck's been around the block for a long time. He knows the game cold. I felt he was going to win us a few games just based on his knowledge of the game, and I think that's proven out.
I'll complete the front office stuff so we could get on the field. Sandy Alderson, was an important person to you, especially early on in getting control of the team. Last year, helping to run the front office when some other stuff fell through, and some off the field issues with Zach Scott and Jared Porter. Is Sandy just a bridge guy, or is he part of this for a while for you, Steve?
Listen, Sandy's going to continue to be part of this. He's been invaluable to me, and he will continue to help me any way he can.
Speaking of guys who've helped you in any way that they can, I'm wondering generally about bringing the whole gang back together. Mike Puma had a story in the Post a few weeks ago and how much it would cost, and it was quite a bit of money. But you have so many free agents, and they all seem to be having great years, which is a positive. Nothing negative about that. But deGrom, Walker, Nimmo, Bassett, you've got quite a list. Diaz. How can I forget Diaz with a great song?
Sure.
How much effort do you feel confident that? When a guy's a free agent, you never know. I feel like Diaz, just from talking to him, Diaz wants to come back badly. That's my read on. Do you feel confident about any of these guys bringing them back? Is there any thought going in of how much of the old gang you do want to bring back? Obviously, it's been a success this year. You want to keep it going, and frankly, what are your chances?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, we really haven't sat down and we've been so thinking about what's going on at the present. I mean, we will sit down at the appropriate time and go over, what our needs are for the next season and who we want to bring back. I mean, we got a lot of great ball players here, and they're doing extraordinary things, and obviously they're all free agents, and they've earned that right, and that's part of the deal. And this is a big moment for them, and I'm sure they're going to entertain offers, and they should, and hopefully we'll be competitive, and we'll make those decisions when the time comes, and we'll see what happens. I mean, just because, John, you're right. I mean, there's no one has an unlimited budget, right? I mean, the numbers could get extraordinary, and we'll have to figure that out, and we will. But we just haven't gotten there yet.
Steve, if I could just drill down on the one guy who I think most of your fan base would be most interested in, and that's deGrom.
Yep.
I understand that you're not going to do this until the offseason, but do you believe that Jacob deGrom actually wants to be a Met going forward? And do you want him, considering there might be some questions about that and his health, do you want him to be a Met going forward? Is that a big priority for you?
Well, listen, I mean, I haven't had a direct conversation with Jacob on this. I mean, obviously he's been a great Met, and it's somebody that I would love to have back. But it's the type of thing I think it's appropriate to have that conversation after the season. I mean, he's been very clear he wants to opt out. He's, like I said, he's earned that right. It's part of his contract, and he it's certainly his prerogative to explore what the market is, and at the appropriate time, we're going to sit down and talk. And he's been a phenomenal Met, and I think I said it the other day, and I'll say it again. I think he's the best pitcher in baseball, and we're going to do whatever we can to bring him back.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to go over these players one by one. You have many free agents and, frankly, a lot of stars here. But I do want to ask one for my daughter, since she is a big Diaz fan. I think a lot of people are with what's been going on with him. He's having an amazing season. What are your thoughts on him, even if you haven't had a direct conversation with him at this point?
I missed that with Diaz?
Yeah, Diaz.
Yeah.
Would you like to bring him back?
I had Diaz up for dinner about a couple weeks ago. Terrific guy, extraordinary season reliever. I mean, he's just had an extraordinary season. Just a great person, great demeanor for the role, right? So calm, just comes in, does his thing. Very likable. I'd love to have him back.
Steve, just to follow up on that, why do you've done this in the past multiple times with various players on the team, brought them up to your home, had dinner with them. Would you like to tell us anyone else you've done it with this year, and what your goal is when you're doing that as the owner of the team?
Well, they're people, right? That right, and they're not just employees that are. This is not just an impersonal relationship, right? I mean, they're important to me, and I want to let them know they're important to me. And so, it's not just you give me performance and I pay you. I think it should be beyond that, and it's a great opportunity to get to know them, get to know what makes them tick, and I think it's my style. It's what I do in my hedge fund. I always use the opportunity to get to know people on a personal level. It's worked for me, and I think it's the proper thing to do.
Steve,
and so I'll continue to do it.
Steve, have you had deGrom up this year, or plan to have deGrom up before his free agency?
No, I haven't had deGrom up this year yet, but I had him up last year.
I want to ask you just generally about the payroll. You're in that 290 range, just a little bit over, just as the Dodgers are. I mean, obviously there are limits. You're in that fourth tier tax, which they, I think, sometimes dub the Steve Cohen tax. I don't know if that bothers you or not. I don't think it probably does, right. Knowing you a bit.
Now, there could have been another Steve Cohen. Maybe it wasn't me, right?
I don't think so. I'm
There's
pretty
a lot
sure
of them around, right?
I actually know 6 Steve Cohens, but I'm pretty sure it was you.
That's my point. Okay.
What are the limits? I mean, Mike Puma, when he estimated that the team might cost $345 million to be brought back together, I mean, I do believe everybody's going to have limits, and you haven't gone crazy. You're right there with the Dodgers at this point. You apparently had a little more room because I know they were talking to some other players at the deadline. How much more room do you think you have?
Actually, I have no idea. Actually, I think we've been very disciplined this year. You got to remember we had a bad contract with Cano, and obviously we ate that contract, and so I think we've been pretty disciplined in that regard. And you got to remember, we'll be paying Cano next year too, and so we'll see what happens. I haven't really even thought about what I'm going to do next year as far as a budget, right? I mean, and I haven't sat down with Billy and the rest of the team, and that's going to happen after the season, and we can figure this out pretty quickly. So I'm not worried about. I mean, these aren't that hard. These decisions aren't that hard. It really depends on who we want to bring back, what are the other opportunities out there, and we'll figure it out. So, and that's part of the process.
For the record, you're the only Steve Cohen I know, Steve.
Okay. Well, I think I grew up with like 2 other Steve Cohens in my town. So there's a bunch of them out there.
This show is leading the league in Steve Cohens right now. Steve, on the subject of payroll, obviously there was concern expressed by, I think, other owners on the way in about where you can take payroll. Have you felt any pushback, any commentary from other owners about what you've done and what you might be willing to do with this club?
Well, I am cognizant that I'm part of a community, right? And I don't want to, just be flippant about what I'm going to do relative to what's going on in the rest of the baseball community. And so listen, I've got to live in this world, right? And I can't just act like it doesn't exist. And so, listen, I think, we're almost $300 million. You should be able to build a pretty good team at $300 million. Okay. So, I mean, if you can't do that, then that's a problem.
I think you did build a pretty good team. In fact, some people favor you because of the Scherzer deGrom combination, and I think Diaz as well. I'm just wondering, looking at your team, my concern, and Ottavino's done a nice job. You've gotten some good performances out of those bridge guys, the 7th, 8th inning guys, which are more important now because most starters don't throw 8 or 9 innings like when we were kids. So that's still important. That's where I would look. Where would your concern be right now as the team goes forward? I mean, you're clearly one of the best 3 or 4 teams with Houston, the Yankees, Dodgers. Basically, there are 4 teams at the top. The Braves are certainly pretty darn good as well. But where do your concerns lie as we head now toward the postseason? We're almost at September.
Yeah, listen, I think what's good, right? I mean, as you get into the playoffs, right? I mean, I think our starting pitching is really terrific, and I think in short series that really gives you an advantage. As far as our relief pitching, obviously I'm a little bit worried as far as our consistency. Now, what's great is I think Lugo and Ottavino are really starting to pitch. Ottavino's been pitching really well for a while. Lugo's really starting to hit his stride. I think that's really important. And don't forget, we've got Drew Smith coming back soon, and Tyler McGill is going to come back, and I think the plan is to put him in the bullpen, and so we have some pieces coming back that are going to supplement what we already have, and obviously Trevor May was hurt, he's come back, and I think as he gets more innings under his belt, I think he's going to start to perform really well too. And I think we're going to look pretty good as we enter the playoffs. And so I think we're going to be pretty deep there. And so, let's and I think between our starting pitching and some of these additions, as they come back in September, I think we're going to be pretty strong heading into the playoffs.
Steve, as a way to wrap up, first of all, thank you again for joining us. I'll just make a quick commentary that if God is in the details, like the Mets weren't always good at the details of things like ceremonies, but like your Seaver ceremony, your Hodges ceremony, the little one for Jay Horowitz, and Old Timers Day was such a brilliant success for you. It feels like just on and off the field, the organization is going in the right way. And I'll just ask a question out of it. I was surprised there was some pushback against you guys retiring Willie Mays' number. So I'm wondering, what do you think about retiring it? And would you like to tell us who comes next? I'll bet Dwight Gooden. Go.
Well, listen, I mean, it was really my decision when I'd heard about that there was a promise made to Willie by Joan Payson and there was no follow through on that. I just felt there was an obligation by an owner that needed to be kept, and I was going to follow through on that, and I just thought that was the right thing to do. Willie, I had spoken to Willie. Willie had confirmed that, and so I was going to follow through on that. I'm glad I did, and we want to celebrate our history, and I was very clear about that from the day one, and there'll be others. And there's a process. We have a Hall of Fame committee, and it meets on a regular basis. And I can't tell you who's going to be next and how it's going to work, but we meet on a quarterly basis, and I assume there'll be others.
Well, Steve, you got a team that might be making some history of its own this season. We thank you so much for joining us on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heath. John, Steve Cohen hasn't given a lot of long-form. I'm not even sure he's given a long-form interview to anyone. He just did with us. We're obviously appreciative of that. What stuck out to you about what the owner of the New York Mets said?
Well, first of all, I'll say he gave a good, honest answers for everything, and he's not too long-winded, which I appreciate, because some people are a little bit long-winded, myself included in that. I thought it was interesting when we asked about the payroll and how the other owners react. He said that he has to live within the world. So I don't think he's going to go as crazy as some people might hope for or think. Obviously, he's spent a lot. He's trying to win. He's over $290 million, as are the Dodgers. But I think that was interesting. There were a lot of interesting things, I thought.
Yeah, I thought he was very interesting. Just on that subject, John, in any athletic contest, whatever your best asset is, you use. You imagine, like, my best punch is an overhand right. I'm not going to use it. Hey, this is like when the Yankees pull up spending money. Yeah. Spend money. If he bought a yacht, he would certainly outfit the yacht with the best stuff, throw the best parties, have the best crew. This is his yacht. He's trying to have joy with this. If he wants to go to 350, the hell with the other owners. Really, like, it's his yacht. Do what you want with it. That's how I feel.
Yeah, no, I understand. But, I mean, it was interesting to hear him say that he's cognizant of the other owners, but he also didn't act like he needs to bash in the Yankees' heads, or however we put it, to him. I thought that was interesting. Some owners of the Mets maybe have not loved the Yankees and vice versa, right? So it's nice. I think it's okay that they can coexist. I like that as a positive. I thought he gave good, interesting answers about the team as well, about the bullpen, and about deGrom. But, I mean, deGrom, I'm just not sure. Of course, he's got to say he's been a phenomenal Met, which he did say that. He said the right things. He said he wants to bring him back, and I believe that they do want to bring him back. But is that one of those things where they're going to have a limit? I don't know. How did you read that? I wasn't sure exactly where to take that, because he had to say that he loves deGrom, which, it's not shocking that he does.
Well, first of all, I do think New York is big enough for both teams. As we're speaking, the Yankees are on pace for a little over 3.2 million fans. The Mets are on pace for a little over 2.7. That means 6 million people going to the games. Both teams' networks are thriving as far as eyeballs on the game. So they're both good teams, excellent teams, and so we know that there's enough fans here to support the two teams. I think what nobody with the Mets can say is Jacob deGrom has to tell us what he wants. Does he want to be here, and how much money does he want? I mean, you made this point before. Max Scherzer's making $43 a year. Does he need to go north of that? For how many years does he need to go north of that? By the way, on the subject of the North, does he want to continue to play in the Northeast, or would he rather get closer to home, to the South? So I think that nobody on the Mets wants to kind of make a firm statement about a guy who's hardly pitched the last couple of years until they smoke him out and he tells them, this is what I need to stay.
Yeah, Steve made that point. It's kind of Jake's decision, as it is all these free agents, and we really don't know how to read him. I mean, he hasn't even come out and say, I love New York, or I want to be in New York, as far as I know, right? So ultimately, it may not be Steve Cohen's call. Maybe like a lot of free agents, it'll all be about the money, and maybe the Mets will outbid him, but maybe it won't be. I don't know. Jake may be just a great poker player, and maybe he's winning the game. I don't know. But, getting the feeling, I'm not sure he wants to stay. I don't know. I'd be guessing. But, there's been that speculation out there about Texas and Atlanta and all the teams in the South, as you alluded to. But, it's good we have this owner, though, at least good for the Mets fans, that they have a shot, obviously, to keep him if he wants to stay.
Yeah, well, it's been a New York kind of regular season with Aaron Judge and Jacob deGrom. I'm expecting it's going to be a New York off season. We'll be all over that on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman, a podcast from the New York Post. I want to thank Jake Brown and Andrew Hartz for producing the show. Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple and Spotify. John Heyman can be found on Twitter with his name, @John Heyman. I'm at Joel Sherman with the number 1. We will be back next Tuesday and every Tuesday on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman.